Open wide, Twins fans. It is time for your Twins Daily Dose. This is Twins Daily's first live stream series that we are going with. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are excited to talk some ball here. Like we said, this is going to be something that we're going to try to bring to you, the audience, multiple times per week. We're kind of testing things out. We're testing out the proper dosage at the moment. But once we get that figured out, we're hoping to get this running pretty frequently so that people can join, start talking about our favorite ball club. And here to do that with me today are two of Twins Daily's finest. We have Mr. Nick Nelson. What's up, Nick?
Hey, Lewis, good to see you. Gregorus, good to see you as well. I'm just adding S's to the end of everyone's names now in the Varland parlance.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Exactly. Sweet Lewis Hennessy is actually what I should change my name there. And of course, like Nick said, we have Mr. Gregory T. Masterson. What's up, Greg?
Lewis, Nicholas, how we doing? Twins baseball, big tie today. I nothing more I want to see every day than a baseball tie. So I'm just glad that baseball's back.
There we go. Well, like we said, not the most climactic ending to their game today. They played the Tampa Bay Rays and they tied 5-5, but there were some fun developments that happened nonetheless. We had Mr. Chris Paddock starting for the Twins, right? And then Mr. Simeon Woods Richardson coming in relief right after him. The rotation is going to be kind of a big talking point, so maybe we can start there. Let's talk about Chris Paddock. I don't know, what do you think? Not the most encouraging outing, but it's spring. It's not too much to be gleaned from it, but what were your thoughts with Mr. Paddock today, Nick?
Yeah, well, I have a question for Greg, actually.
Yes.
What does today's outing mean for Chris Paddock?
Yes.
I checked the Chris Paddock tracker on the website just before the show started. It appears that he's still on the team at this moment, but by the time we finish, who knows?
I do have an answer for that. What that means is stop letting him pitch to Caminero. That's it. Like, as long as he didn't do that, it was fine, I guess.
I guess it's the kryptonite. I don't know. This early in spring, we can't really draw too many conclusions from these pitchers, but was there anything about either him or any of these other pitchers that went today? We're talking, Simeon Woods Richardson came in relief, Jorge Alcala, Cole Sands, Cody Funderburk. Is there anything that we can glean from their performances so far? For me, I'm looking at Cody Funderburk because we have yet to see Danny Coulomb pitch. And after that, Funderburk's the de facto top lefty, right? I mean, he's going to have to be on his game. Looks like he gave up a earned run in an inning pitch today. What do we think? Greg, Nick, any initial thoughts from someone like Mr. Funderburk?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has an opportunity right now. I don't know, how wide that door is open with us not seeing Danny Coulomb quite yet. But I don't know, as long as he's just got to be functional right now, I think is the minimum for him. There's going to be opportunities for Funderburk in this bullpen this season. It's early in spring training, so I don't want to jump at anything, but it's nice to just know that he is healthy, because that's half the battle through spring training, especially in bullpen arms.
Especially with this club, it seems like. So we will gladly take a healthy Cody Funderburk, no matter what the results are early on. Nick, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the biggest thing is Chris Paddock and how he's doing, and the fact that he seems to be healthy. Our guy John Bonus of Twins Daily is down covering spring training, and he was at the game today, and he talked to Paddock after his start and shared some notes with us in the Slack. And it sounds like Paddock is just really glad to be focused on pitching this spring instead of his health. Seems like he's feeling really good. Had a pretty normal off season. Gave up those home runs to Caminero on his fastball. And we know that Paddock, I think, strives to be a fastball first guy who lives on that fastball. So that's worth watching. He admitted he kind of got beat on those fastballs, but I know he felt really good about his curveball shape. And I know with his slider, he's trying to really focus on velocity and make that a really nice, sharp slider to complement the fastball. So just an upside guy at the back end of this rotation that I think, we all kind of were convinced he might not be around this year. I'll keep my eye on the tracker online just to be sure, but it does seem like he's going to be in the rotation and a nice little wild card to have in there.
Sure.
Well, and it's going to be such an issue if he does really struggle because I'm sure he's fully aware of this, but they have Festa and Matthews right now, who every single fan is begging to see
Right.
more of. And so I'm really interested to see kind of how the early season goes, how much kind of wiggle room they're going to have, giving Chris Paddock the ability to go out there and compete. It looks like musings from Twins territory. Reading our minds over here. But yeah, I am curious to see how much of a leash, like Matt said, how much of a leash there is going to be for Chris Paddock. I don't really like that phrase all that much,
Sure.
but yeah, gosh, it's got to be wearing on him for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be especially interesting if we see kind of what we saw last year, where it's like he's just a different guy every time he takes the mound. I mean,
Right.
sometimes he looks so dominant, and then he'd come out for the next start, and his velocity would be down like 4 miles an hour. So that inconsistency, if we start seeing that again, and a guy like Simeon Woods Richardson was giving you great consistency, a guy like Festa gives you that that high level potential. Do they look at something like making an early move to the bullpen or something like that? Because you can't, like you said, I mean, they have this depth. They can't just stick with this guy just based on his veteran status.
And there's a lot of depth. Oh, sorry. You go for it, Lou.
No, I was just saying it really seems like he's pretty penned into his starting rotation spot coming out of camp here. Like we said, how long is his leash? Is a move to the bullpen what's next if he doesn't cut it in the rotation, or is there something else in order? Because he seems like something to a player who either he's healthy and he's going to perform, or he's not going to be healthy and he's going to be on the shelf. It's hard for me to see kind of a middle ground for Chris Paddock there. Maybe that's just me. What do you guys think? Greg, your thoughts before I interrupted you?
No, yeah, I was just going to say, everybody talks about, we'll just move him to the bullpen if it's not working. But number one, this bullpen is stacked right now. We're already talking about there being potentially 10 or 11 guys who could be in the bullpen on opening day, and not in a they don't have any good options, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one type thing. No, it's literally just there's so many solid options that you have to make some really tough choices. And so there's not a great pathway for him. And also, I know we kind of throw this out quite frequently that he could be moved to the bullpen, but a lot of that is based on one outing 2 years ago.
Sure.
If we're being completely honest, the lasting image of Chris Paddock in our minds is him going 2.1 innings against the Astros in game 4 of the ALDS, and he absolutely shoved. The Twins would have probably fallen out of that game if he did not step up and do what he did. However, he's had 8 or 9 other appearances out of the bullpen, and none of them have been that one. But that's the one that we have stuck in our head, and we're just convinced that if you just move Paddock to the bullpen, he's going to do that again. And I'm not 100% sure about that.
While we're chatting about this, anybody in the listening audience or anybody joining us on YouTube here, feel free to join the conversation, throw in your thoughts. What are your expectations for Chris Paddock? I don't know, Nick, anything to add for him?
Yeah, no, I think Greg pretty much covered it. To me, it's less what could he be in the bullpen, and more can he hold up and stay healthy in the bullpen? I mean, we're talking about a guy that's 30 now. And still has not been able to put anything resembling a full season together in the rotation. So, it's just one of those things where at some point, maybe you have to say, let's let him throw in shorter stints. Let's lower the workload, and let's see if we can get the most out of this arm, which clearly has a lot of talent.
I'm a little curious to see what the moves are kind of around Paddock that help him to kind of, if the Twins put an effort forth to try to do something to make him, stay healthy throughout the year, whether that's, we talked about, somebody threw it out in our Slack channel of, do they try to separate Chris Paddock from, whether it's Simeon Woods Richardson, whoever is the 5th starter in the rotation, let's say, try to separate them so that there's a little bit of distance between who would, at least on paper right now, look to be the shorter starters. We saw how detrimental that was when we had Dylan Bundy and Chris Archer back to back for virtually that entire season, and how gassed the bullpen got instantly, very quickly that year. Do they try to do something like that this year? What do you think? Are there any other moves that they could make around the inking of Chris Paddock in that rotation picture?
Well, they did that last year, actually. I believe that they put Ober in between Paddock and Woods Richardson. I don't know. It was maybe in May, only about a month into the season. I could definitely see that happening again.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it wasn't just, I mean, 2022 is a great example, but even in the second half of last year when they had Joe Ryan go down, they've got like 3 rookies in the rotation. Yeah, that bullpen got gassed. I mean, hopefully they're going to have the depth this year to sort of navigate those things. I'm curious to see how long we got the link there. There is Chris Paddock still on the Twins, which was referenced earlier. Curious to see how long, he's going to want even like Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober going into games early in the season. Because, he's really, Rocco's always more focused on matchups and not letting guys go through the order a third time as opposed to like a specific pitch count or inning total. So I do think it's going to be curious. We have this big deep bullpen with all these quality arms. How do you leverage that? How do you manage your starters in light of that?
Yeah,
short arms for the record.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing here is Chris Paddock opening day starter.
Why not?
Send it.
Why
Done.
not?
For Baltimore, yeah, sure.
For Baltimore. Yep. Boy, could you imagine him getting traded again in another spring training? Like, let's say late spring training. I'd feel so bad for the guy. How tough must have that been one time, let alone 2 here when you're all settled in, trying to come back healthy and they ship you away. Unbelievable. Okay, so I think we covered Chris Paddock pretty extensively, but anybody watching, feel free to join the conversation. For right now, the next talking point I wanted to bring up was...
we do have a question.
Okay,
actually.
All right. We got over under on early season Paddock trade if Twins don't have arm injuries and other teams do. Looking at the Twins, pretty extensive starting depth that they look to have on paper right now. Hopefully everybody remains healthy, knocking on wood there. I don't know, Nick, what do you think about that question?
I'm of 2 minds. You don't really see trades like that materialize like early in the season before deadline territory a lot. Definitely I could see the point where it's like we got maybe 2 good guys starting in AAA, knocking on the door. Paddock looks good. I do think maybe that's kind of been one thing they've been waiting on in terms of like a trade is just getting him out on the mound, showing his stuff, letting people see that he's healthy and throwing hard. Obviously seeing him do that in the regular season would be even more encouraging and confidence building, but you can't have too much starting pitching, right? I mean, even if they feel like they've got this good depth early in the season, we've seen how much that can erode and sort of diminish over the course of a campaign. So unless it's like really like a way where they could just address an immediate need, which is kind of hard to envision from like a contending team that would trade with them, then I would have a hard time seeing that. Maybe at the deadline to like get some offense.
Sure. The question said, what are the odds, right? Something like that.
Yeah,
I would say the odds are pretty slim, mostly because we just don't see the Twins make early season trades like that very often. They're very cognizant of losing a player and losing that depth, especially early.
What do you mean?
On.
They traded Danny Santana in April in 2018.
Who did they trade?
Or 16, I don't know, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
it was their first ever trade.
Okay, all right.
An April trade of Danny Santana.
Okay, so that tells us 2 things. They did it once and then never did it again. So
not doing that again.
One.
Couldn't let him go. Couldn't let Mr. Danny Santana go. No, that's a good question, though. I would say odds are pretty slim, but at the same time, kind of an unprecedented time for where the franchise has been, at least this front office in the last few years. They have to come out pretty hot. I think it's going to be pretty tricky to ride a early season. I don't know, a blunder. What do you think, Greg? Anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of things have to go right for the Twins for them to be in a position to trade Chris Paddock in like April or May. I think that both Zebby Matthews and David Festa need to look good. I think that there need to be like some strategically valuable injuries to other pitchers around the league. And I think that Chris Paddock needs to at least look fine. Yeah. I think all 4 of those things would have to happen. I could definitely see it happening. I feel like if it's not like by the end of spring training, it probably won't, be until if it does happen in like July. But I could see it happening. I would not put very high odds on it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But like you said, good question. Thank you for sending that in. What do we think? Let's move on to an offensive player category. As much as I love talking about the Twins pitching depth, Mr. Harrison Bader has made a pretty good first impression, I would say, in his first week of play in the Grapefruit League. One thing I was kind of thinking about with Harrison Bader, what if he's supposed to be the Carlos Santana replacement? He's the 1-year guy who comes in and plays really good defense, but can also hit a few dingers along the way. When he was coming up as a young prospect and, in the first couple of years in the big leagues with the Cardinals, I remember hearing a lot of buzz about the fact that he could hit a decent amount of home runs. Not that he has some excellent raw power or anything like that, but he had some good in-game stuff. So, what do we think? Is that a good logical way to think about the Harrison Bader signing, that he is a Carlos Santana replacement in that lineup? What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I think that's not a bad way to look at it. I think, it's probably hard to envision him kind of having that sort of offensive standard.
Sure.
Santana, even with showing some decline in recent years, was still at the very least an average hitter, whereas Bader's been well below that bar. But I do think, you hear things from people that are close to the Twins, and they think that he's got some offense in him. They think they can tap another level. As you mentioned, when he was coming up, he was looked at as a potential two-way star. That's why he was a top prospect, top draft pick. And he has shown that ability in the past. He had some good above average production a few years ago, just hasn't been able to get back to it. So I am curious. I'm also really interested to see how, I'm assuming him and Buxton, even if Buxton's pretty healthy, are going to be splitting a lot of time in center. We'll probably see a lot of Buxton at DH. Matthew Trueblood, our editor at Twins Daily, wrote an article at the end of last year about Buxton basically seeing some decline in some of his defensive metrics, which is probably not surprising for a guy that is now in his 30s, has been put through the ringer with his body, and the injuries have taken a toll. So, if Bader comes here and looks really good defensively in center field, and Buxton is healthy enough to play, but maybe is still showing some of those signs where he's just not getting to the balls he's used to, I'll be curious to see how that sort of shifts over the course of the year, and if we really start to see something maybe a little closer to the Michael A. Taylor setup, where it's Buxton DHing a lot, Bader in center. Because, the idea of Bader in the outfield corners is nice in theory, but he just hasn't played those positions at all in the last 5 years. And putting a Gold Glove center fielder in the outfield corners just seems like a little bit of a misallocation of how you're using him, especially if you're paying him. This was their marquee offseason addition.
Yeah.
$6 million.
Big time bucks.
Dang. Man, hey, Greg, anything else to say, or is it just the 6 million comment from you?
No, I will say this is a long running theory I have. If you look at a lot of the Twins, a lot of veteran free agent acquisitions for the Twins over the last few years have not been great hitters, but they have had one kind of pattern I've seen is that they make a lot of contact. And now Harrison Bader over the last few years has not been a good hitter. But if you look at his offensive profile, I don't know if I would even call it a strength, but his predominant trait is the fact that he makes contact and he doesn't strike out, or at least he's league average, which is saying something for Harrison Bader compared to some of his other skills. And so it seemed, so if you can talk about people who are Manuel Margot, Carlos Santana himself is a bat to ball guy. He does not, he pops his home runs, but he doesn't actually do a ton of damage on contact. Donovan Solano. So I do wonder if they kind of circled that and said, hey, he still makes contact. He's fine making contact. He doesn't have a ton of swing and miss. Maybe we can just boost up just a little bit his exit velocity and make a little bit more hard contact and see what happens. I'm not counting on it. I hesitate to even say that I have any idea that he would be the Carlos Santana of this year, but I did notice that, and I am curious to see if that's something that they're trying to work on.
Let's give him 6 weeks with the Borg. The Borg,
Exactly.
Baby. Let's see.
Let's see it.
Yeah, that would be great because, we've heard a lot that he's going to get a lot of playing time one way or another. One thing that I brought up, I think, on the Twins Off Daily podcast, cheap plug there, we talked about it at the time of the signing with Harrison Bader. Of course, I just lost my point now. I know what it was. I could see him not necessarily starting the majority of games, but he's going to be a player that finishes a lot of games. He's going to be somebody that comes in for pinch hit opportunity and then just stays in the game because his defense is so good and he takes over. So that'll be interesting to see how, his late in the game theatrics. Let's hope that he is memorable in it for a good reason for that, instead of Greg's favorite, Mr. Manny Magoo, who came up a little short in that department. Chat, what do we think? Well, what do you think about Harrison Bader? What are your expectations for him? Any sort of questions that you have surrounding him and his picture, or where he fits into the Twins picture, I should say? Please let us know.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say that Harrison Bader was 0 for 10 pinch hitting last season.
Ooh.
So if anybody wants to follow that storyline, he's already got a head start on Manny Magoo. Well, actually, no. Manny Magoo hasn't had a pinch hit since like June of 2023. So maybe he won't catch him, but it would be funny if he did.
The bigger concern than his pinch hitting record last year, I mean, if we're talking about little small sample concerns, is he was like horrible against left-handed pitching last year. I mean, and in like a decent number of at-bats, like 130 at-bats. I think his track record beyond that is that he's been solid against them, but if that's how you're going to be using them, I think we've seen this a few times with Twins guys where it's like they bring them in based on that strength and then they aren't able to fulfill it because small samples or whatever. So really going to be curious about, how he's able to rebound against lefties.
That actually is a Manuel Margot similarity as well, where Margot has overall in his career, he's been good against left-handed pitching. But if you go on like a year-by-year basis, and you're talking about like WRC plus, right? You'd see it like go from 80, so 20% below league average against lefties, to the next year go 130, which is 30% better, and it would just fluctuate like 80 to 130 to 90 to 120 to 140, like it almost looked like every single year. And so like Harrison Bader, sort of the same thing, where he had that year 2 years ago where he had a WRC plus of 151 against lefties, and everybody's like, okay, like let's see if can we just have him be a platoon hitter? And then he's unplayable against lefties last year. So that's another similarity. If people are scared of Manny Magoo 2.0, well, I don't know. Not the most comforting.
It's going to be interesting to track him, over the course of the year against those like three other right-handed outfielders that signed within the same 2 days. Randall Grichuk. The Twins probably could have had any of those guys because they all signed for less. So, if Grichuk's like crushing lefties and Bader's just not getting it done, I think we'll look back at that decision as a pretty pivotal one.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. Like we said, spring training stats, not super meaningful, especially early on. We're hoping to see folks healthy and happy and running around. Two guys that are not healthy so far in spring camp are the Twins' top two prospects, Walker Jenkins and Emmanuel Rodriguez. They are both sidelined right now with sprained ankles, I believe. Both sound pretty minor, but still not something you want to see, especially Twins fans got so much PTSD from all the top prospects that have gone through considerable injuries. I think we're going to see one right now. Mr. Royce Lewis. Right against the wall.
Why?
Ouch. Greg, you are a
Hey, who's producing this crap? Somebody needs to shut this down. Have a word with that producer.
There goes our optimistic spin.
Yeah. Well, and and there's another one.
Gosh.
Unbelievable. That is just sticks the landing.
Anyway.
And he was never the same. Never the same.
He started slumping.
But anyway, these top two prospects, sprained ankles, hopefully nothing major, but it is not Brock saying, why are you doing this to us? We do not have to watch that clip anymore. I don't know. What do we think? Are we making too much of it if we're worried at this point with a couple of sprained ankles to the top prospects? What do we think, Nick?
I mean, these seem like pretty minor injuries. Doesn't seem like it's hopefully going to even delay the start of their seasons, but it is just unreal. I mean, the frequency of injuries for Twins and their top prospects. Last spring, Walker Jenkins got hurt right out of the gates.
First game.
Emmanuel Rodriguez missed a ton of time last year to get surgery on his thumb, so he's still coming back from that. You do just wonder if any of these guys are ever just going to get a clear runway. It seems like it's just never going to happen, which is so frustrating and disappointing. But there's another part of me that just says, get these out of the way. They're going to get hurt from time to time. Hopefully they bounce back, and maybe these guys will have some healthy seasons.
Sure. Let's hope so. Sprained ankle, I know not too much, but with Emmanuel Rodriguez, very happy to see that it wasn't anything to do with his wrist or his hand or his thumb or anything like that, because that's what kept him out for most of last season. Greg, what do you think? What's sprained of yours right now?
Oh gosh, my AC joint not
Hmm.
feeling too good. But I don't know. Like, have these guys like tried stretching before the game, or like I know that they're doing the whole everybody's on field doing batting practice. Maybe like during that time they could also do like group stretches or yoga or something in center field. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm getting tired of this. Walker Jenkins, like touch your toes once in a while, buddy.
Get some good stretches in there. Feel the burn. Yeah, I don't know. Nothing too much to worry about. I'm happy we've seen Luke Keeschel play a couple of times,
Yep.
get some big hits and some good spots. So that's been fun to see, especially since he missed the last 8 weeks of the season last year when he went under the knife for Tommy John. Let's see. We haven't seen him play the field yet, though. Correct? He's just been DHing. I want to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It sounds like he's gonna get in the field in like a couple weeks, they're hoping.
Okay.
So maybe at the end of spring he'll do a little bit in the field. I don't know if that means playing second or if that means like playing first, and if he has a chance to double somebody off on second, just forget it and run it to the bag. I don't know what that all entails, but it sounds like in a couple weeks.
So I just submitted my top 30 Twins prospects to Seth Stosen for twinsdaily.com. I don't know if you two did the same, but I don't know. Besides maybe Zebby Matthews, do you think Keeschel's the closest to the big leagues out of some of their maybe top 10 prospects? I think in mind he probably would be the closest.
Yeah, I do personally. I think, if he would have stayed healthy through the end of last season and not needed the surgery, he'd be possibly playing for a roster spot right now. It's a really polished skill set. I know they're really excited about him, and a skill set that they kind of need. They've got some sluggers. They're talking about Matt Wallner as their leadoff man, which maybe we can chat about.
Yeah.
But Keeschel has that great leadoff skill set. Great discipline, line drive hitter. Takes great at bats, way better than you'd expect from a kid that's so fresh out of college. So I'm super excited on him, and I think the defensive flexibility he offers could help him find his way into their plans pretty quickly.
What do you think is like his most natural spot? Where do you see him sticking the longest?
Second base, it seems like. I mean, I think that's where he feels he's the best. Obviously if he can play center with any quality, then having him available there would be huge. Because there's not a lot of guys that you can use at those two positions, a couple different up the middle positions. So
yeah. Well, very interesting. Greg, what do you think? Keeschel, yes, no, thumbs up?
I don't know. It's hard for me not to say that Emmanuel Rodriguez isn't better, or won't be there quicker, though so much of that is injury questions as well. I don't know. I think it might be a little bit more on need. Like if Byron Buxton goes down, does Emmanuel Rodriguez get the call over Luke Keeschel? I don't know. I think that they're both pretty close to being ready, or at least if not ready for, to get their feet wet, embarrass themselves, go back to St. Paul after 3 weeks or something like that.
Naturally. Nice. Well, that's awesome. It's going to be really fun to see what type of season he has in 2025, because like we said, it got cut short, but he's making that kind of meteoric rise. Those are always really fun to watch for prospects. So hopefully he just gets right back where he left off. That'd be a fun development, and hopefully see him at Target Field May, June, July. That would be maybe optimistic, but could be a heck of a lot of fun. I don't know. What do you think, guys? Anything else we want to bring up before we wrap her up here on the Twins Daily Dose?
Well, I do think the lineups have been interesting. Wallner hitting at the top of the lineup, just really intriguing. Obviously not the traditional prototype for that role, but, listening to Rocco's sort of rationale for it, I think makes sense. Like he's been their best hitter over the last 2 years. Despite what you think about him when you think of a guy who strikes out all the time, power hitter, he really does have pretty good patience. He gets on base a lot, in part because he gets hit by pitches a lot too. Like a 370 on base percentage over the past 2 seasons. That's great in the leadoff spot. I can definitely see the logic of it. I do wonder, just because like Wallner's going to be like a super streaky guy. We know that, right? I mean, he's going to have stretches that are like the way he opened last season that were 2 for 25 with like 16 strikeouts or whatever. So just with that kind of makeup, how do you deal with that? When that's happening in the leadoff spot, you're getting these like 0 for 4s with 3 strikeouts in front of your best hitters. Stylistically, is that going to be, are people going to get frustrated with that when he's in those kind of droughts? I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic there in the leadoff spot, but I like I like the lefty, righty, righty, lefty that Rocco's talking about, and I think it would set up some interesting situations for opposing managers.
Yeah, last season we saw Trevor Larnach get a ton of play in the number 2, number 3 hole, sometimes leading off, I want to say. Maybe I'm making that up, but I know he batted early on quite often. And he was, their most consistent left-handed slugger for most of the year last season. Do we see Matt Wallner take over as kind of that top option that's going to get a lot of that? That'll be interesting to see. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I actually just wrote about this a few days ago at Twins Daily. So if you want to read like 1,300 words on that, go back to Twins Daily, find it.
You do.
I do. I don't mind it. I wish that, there was a better option, I suppose. Like if Edouard Julien was the guy he used to be, not guy he used to be, but the guy he was in 2023, right? I would 100% prefer that. But there also is, there's value in just having one of your best hitters getting as many plate appearances as possible. And I mean, last year, actually, I think over the last 2 years, over the last 2 years, I think Matt Wallner is the best hitter on the Twins in, half seasons, essentially in both years. I think Correa was a better hitter last year, but when you average out the 2 years, I think it was Matt Wallner is the best hitter on the Twins, statistically, at least over the last 2 years. Don't cite me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. So why not? And he gets on base. He's not an embarrassment on the base paths. He's like a fine runner, and that's actually really good compared to the rest of the Twins. Like they only have a handful of people who you would feel any comfort calling a runner. So
Matt Wallner over the last 2 seasons ranks 12th among all major league hitters with 500 plus plate appearances in weighted on base average. And everyone in front of him on that list is like a all-star MVP contender. So I do think people don't necessarily realize just how good Wallner has been, especially with him getting sent down for, much of the first half last year, but he's legitimately been one of the most productive hitters in all of baseball.
Yeah.
He's also like top 5 in swing speed, which is
just
such a weird stat that like you don't really think about it. You look at the other people on that list, and it's like, holy crap. As long as he's making contact, that ball is going to be.
For sure.
And he's one of us. I mean, we should be fun. We should be absolutely foaming at the mouth for this guy. Anyway, Matt Wallner will be very interesting to see. I wonder how much play he'll get as the actual leadoff guy once the season comes. But unless you guys have anything else you want to bring up, I was just going to bring up some of the top stories that are on Twins Daily's front page today. So I'm encouraging everybody to go check on this. We have, are the Twins betting on the wrong right-handed bench bats? That's by Cody Christie. We have Minnesota Twins surplus of arms. Was it a smart depth play or was it a missed trade opportunity? That's from Matthew Taylor. And of course we have Big Daddy John Bonus. He is down covering the games at Hammond Stadium. You should catch all of his daily musings. He usually has something up every couple of days here, just with his thoughts from that day's game. Today, he has one called BOGO Pitchers and 2 other things that might matter from the spring training game. So please go check that out at twinsdaily.com. Nick, Greg, anything you want to say before we take off?
Yeah, I would just say I've been doing my position analysis series, which I do every spring on the site. So it's like an in-depth sort of look at the outlook and the depth and the prospects at every position. So I did catcher and first base last week. I'll be covering the rest of the infield this week. So make sure you check in for those.
Greg,
and I want to say Baba Booey, Baba Booey, Baba Booey.
Couldn't have said it better myself, my man. Well done. Thank you guys for joining us. Audience members, thank you for joining the Twins Daily Dose. Like we said, we are still working on the proper dosage, but we are hoping to have this as a regular option for you, whether that's after the game, before the game. We're still working on that. Let us know your thoughts. What's going to work for you? Do you like having these conversations? Would you like having them on a daily basis? So please let us know your thoughts. And as always, thank you very much and stay sweet, everybody.